Hello everybody, I hope everybody's doing well. We're back for part 3 of this vintage blower here. If you watched part 1, my friend Richie brought it in along with a lawnmower. We bartered, so he gave me a lawnmower. And about this blower here, he was telling me he put gas in it, the gas was leaking out, so I rebuilt the carburetor on it. Now, I don't know if he was talking about this machine or the lawnmower he gave me and said it ran, but it was flooding gas out of the carburetor. So I did the carburetor rebuild on it, and then I tried to start it and wouldn't start. It was popping. So I checked for spark. It had weak spark. Now what I did, I think it was in part 2. Yeah, I think it was video part 2. I pulled it apart. I took the housing off. I took the flywheel off. I took the points cover off. The points looked cruddy, so I took the points out, cleaned them up. I put the whole thing back together, and after that I had no spark at all. This time when I do this, I'm not going to put the cover back on it. I'm going to stick the flywheel back on it, pull the spark plug out, and try to spin it with the air gun to see if we got spark before we put it back together. And I'm going to pull it apart now and see if it was something I did wrong or see what's going on in there. And I'll be back with you. Okay, I found the problem already. I pulled the flywheel off. And this wire right here going to the coil is broken. Now I can't see how I could have broke it because the wires run up in here through this guide here. And also the flywheel opening is pretty wide, so there's no way I could have caught that in the flywheel. I don't know if it was broken already or it was getting ready to break, and then after I was messing with the points it broke off altogether. But it's broke off not out here but pretty much into where the coil wire is going to the coil here. So I have to try to pull this whole coil assembly off here and see if I can repair the wire, and then hopefully we'll have spark. But I'm going to take off this cover here where the points are and make sure the gap is still okay and everything like that. The first thing I thought is maybe this bayonet here was grounded out. This is the wire that goes down to the shut-off, down by the throttle here. And that all seems to look okay there. So I'm going to try to do the repair on it, and then I'll be back and we'll see if it has spark now. Okay, I did a real half-assed fix on this. I put a connector here to connect the wires. Now the problem with this is this insulation on here and the wire itself is just coming apart like crazy. And also, he's gonna have to get a coil for it, but we'll get it running today, I think, like this. As soon as this thing stops and he has no spark, he's keeping this for himself. As soon as this thing runs for him, and then one day it's not going to have spark. I'm going to try to show you this too. The wire's coming apart right in here. I'm just watching to make sure it doesn't hit any metal. But it needs a coil because there's no connector to the coil. The wires are just, molded right inside the coil. So it's not like it has connectors and you could pull the connectors off it and change the wiring, because I would just rewire it, and you can't because you're working with tissue here. Everything's just breaking. It's just so old. So incidentally, I was able to pull this whole assembly off here, but you have to make sure. I made sure that where I pulled the bolt out, it's got like one of those washer bolt deals. And I made sure there was marks on there because this is your timing. These are the two bolts, one here and one here. And I was able to pull the whole assembly off to work on it. And just make sure you put it back on, because that's your ignition timing. So I'm going to put it back together enough to where I can spin the flywheel and see if we have spark now. And there should be no reason why it won't. It should start. I had to take the fuel line off, dude. There's another bracket down here. Like, everything's in the way. To get the coil wire off, I wasn't able to pull a whole assembly off without taking this plate off and the fuel line. And then I was able to work on it. So we'll see what happens here. Okay, everybody, it's the next day. I put this engine that was on the blower. I put the points back in it. Put the whole assembly back in. You know, you seen I cut the wire to splice it. Still had no spark. I didn't want to take any chances with this engine here. And I looked in the storage here, and of course, all the way in the back, I had to take everything out in here. And all the way in the back, I had 3 Tecumseh engines. One was blown. It was a blown engine. And the other one had a smaller shaft on it. And then, much to my surprise, I found one with the 1-inch shaft on it. And I took and I put the engine on. I cleaned the points. This engine has points on it also. Now the problem here, this is the shaft that I just showed you, and that's where the impeller goes on. It had the hole in the crankshaft here, but it wasn't threaded. So I got a 3/8 tap, and I was able to tap it out, I don't know, about a 1/2 inch or so to hold this impeller on. They're real hard to get off, but once they're off, they slide right back on. So you need something to keep the impeller from coming out. So I was able to retap it. I was scared the top was going to break off in there because the crank is real hardened steel. I kind of oversized the hole a little bit compared to what you're supposed to drill it out to run the tap in there, and it worked out good. So I got that all set. I took the carburetor off the old engine and I stuck it back on this engine. And this engine had no gas tank on it, so I took his gas tank off his engine and put it on this one, of course. And it started right up first pull. And I know this engine was a good engine because what I do, I paint everything, and then I know it's a good engine. And the other Tecumseh I had, I painted that one also, so that's a good engine, but the shaft was too small, so he got lucky here. Okay, I'm going to finish putting it back together, and then we'll give it a quick start up and see how it goes. It's raining again here. Okay, everybody, I got it running. Boy, that thing's loud. And that's it. Wasn't even worth the trouble to fix it, but I like the challenge.